What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to continue my 2023 college football schedule preview / projected records for the upcoming 2023 college football season. And we continue them with the Utah Utes. Here was a schedule last year for this Utah team. You see the overall record for this team last year was 10-4 overall. They had a 9-3 overall regular season, but if you count that 10 win, of course, that was from the Pac-12 championship. This Utah team won the Pac-12 championship last year, and now this team has made it to back-to-back Rose Game appearances. Of course, they've lost now the 2 Rose Bowl matchups in a row. Of course, Ohio State from the year before, and then, of course, last year to Penn State. You look at who Utah played last year in the non-conference on this schedule. They played Florida on the road, obviously losing that game. It was obviously a tough place to play. And then they played Southern Utah and then San Diego State. Obviously not too tough of a non-conference schedule last year. And you look at who they lost in the Pac-12. They lost to UCLA on the road. That was a back-and-forth game from the start, but then Utah obviously lost that game on the road. And then Oregon, they lost that game on the road as well, but still Utah got to the Pac-12 championship, and now they've won back-to-back Pac-12 championships again as well. Could they make it 3 in a row? Could Utah make it 3 in a row for this team? We'll find out in 2023. And the good news is for this Utah team, Cam Rising coming back for another year. That's going to be really a big return for this Utah team. And pretty much, one of those top 10 returns in all of college football. Here's the schedule for 2023 for this Utah team. You look at who they play in the non-conference. They'll play Florida once again here on September the 2nd. And then they'll play Baylor here on the road on September the 9th. So you start out September with 2 non-conference games against 2 Power 5 teams from the SEC and then, of course, the Big 12. And not every year, it really doesn't happen. We don't really see a Pac-12 team face a Big 12 team in the regular season. It doesn't really happen that much. But these are 2 really tough non-conference games to kick off the year of 2023. And then, of course, the only easy non-conference game will be that game against Weber State on September the 16th. And again, no divisions in the Pac-12, so let's go game by game now. So they'll start with 2 non-conference games to kick off the year with Florida on September the 2nd. Obviously lost to Florida last year. We don't really know what the roster is going to look like for Florida just yet. We don't really know what the status is going to be for that team. And then obviously Baylor here on the road. Baylor wasn't that good of a team last year, but maybe they can make it a turnaround this season and possibly make the Big 12 championship. But yeah, 2 tough non-conference games to kick off the year of 2023 for this team. And then they'll play that easy non-conference game against Weber State here on September the 16th. So that's the only easy non-conference game they have. The non-conference schedule really tough for Utah. And then they'll open up Pac-12 play with UCLA here on September the 23rd. So they're playing UCLA a little bit earlier this year in the 2023 season. Obviously, they played last year in October, probably the second week, I believe it was. So they'll play that game on September the 23rd, another interesting game there. And then they'll play on the road at Oregon State. Going to be a tough place to play here, and this one will be on a Friday night. I think so. So, on September the 29th. So, yeah, this will be a tough place to play for Utah. Maybe they will still be favored in that game, but we'll get to my projection in just a minute. And then they'll get a bye week after playing that game, and then they'll play Cal here on October the 14th, a Cal team that I really don't know what they're going to look like just yet. And I think for Utah, they'd probably rather have the bye week after Cal instead of having it before California because they do play USC here on the road on October the 21st. But Utah did defeat USC last year in the regular season. It was back and forth the whole way. And then obviously Utah beat them in the Pac-12 championship. So it's kind of a revenge game here for USC because they have lost now 2 games in a row to Utah. But Utah ready for this one. I believe they will be ready for this one. It's going to be a back and forth game, I believe, once again against 2 great offensive teams. And of course, Caleb Williams coming back and Cam Rising, obviously 2 talented quarterbacks going at it in this game. And then October the 28th, they'll face Oregon here at home this time. So this is a bit of a revenge game here for Utah. Of course, they lost on the road last year to Oregon. And Oregon kind of fell apart there at the end of the season. But, good news for Oregon is they returned Bo Nix back at quarterback. So we got another good quarterback competition here going at it. And, these are tough back-to-back games here, but, the good news is you get Oregon at home, but USC will be on the road. And then they'll play Arizona State here on November the 4th, Washington on the road on November the 11th, and then they'll play Arizona here on November the 18th. So you got back-to-back road games here, on the road at Washington and then on the road at Arizona. Washington should be a pretty interesting team this year. Of course, they return their starting quarterback from last year. Of course, in the Pac-12, there's a lot of quarterbacks coming back for another year, or maybe in their 5th year, maybe their 6th year. Arizona will be a pretty big challenge, but I think they'll still be favored in that game. And then they'll end things out with Colorado here on November the 25th. So a Colorado team that's recruiting pretty well. Of course, Deion Sanders now the head coach down there. Could be a really interesting team this season. And this is probably a team that you don't want to play in the month of November. But looking at this schedule for Utah in 2023 is a really tough schedule. It's not a brutal schedule because they don't really have to play like Power 5 teams in 3 of those non-conference games. But they're playing 2 Power 5 teams in 2 out of those 3 games. And that's going to be a really tough stretch there in the month of September to begin the year. So Florida at home and then Baylor on the road. And then you have to play all these other Pac-12 teams on the schedule. So now let's get to the projection here for this Utah team. This is the scale I've been pretty much using for these projections. If it's a 1% game, these will stay in the red. These are games where Utah has no chance of winning. You probably won't see any of those games on here. 20% games, these are games where Utah is going to be about a couple touchdown underdog. And then 40% games, these are about a touchdown underdog. You probably won't see any of those red, orange, and yellow games on here on this schedule. 50-50 games, these are games where I think they can go either way. Obviously, games that are going to be really close in the spread. 60% games, Utah is going to be favored by about a touchdown in these games. 80% games will be in the blue. Utah will be favored by about a couple touchdowns. And then 90% games, these are games where Utah is going to be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. So, and that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the green games here for this Utah team. Games where Utah is going to be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And I just got one game on that schedule, and that's Weber State here on September the 16th. That's the only game I see Utah winning by more than 3 touchdowns, because the rest of their games here on this schedule, I really don't see them winning other games more than 3 touchdowns. Obviously, you got the Pac-12 teams and then the 2 non-conference games against Baylor and Florida. So, yeah, a really tough non-conference schedule, and this is the only green game I see on this schedule for this Utah team to win by more than 3 touchdowns. We now go to the games now in the blue, games where Utah is going to be favored by a couple touchdowns, and I got 4 of those games on the schedule. I got Cal here on October the 14th, Arizona State on November the 4th, Arizona on the road on November the 18th, and then Colorado here on November the 25th. I think they will be favored in all these games by a couple touchdowns. Of course, Cal and Arizona State, I really don't know what they're going to look like just yet. Arizona will be a tough one. That's why I got to put it in the blue. I really would have probably put this one in the green if it was a home game for Utah, but I'm going to stick with it and put it in the blue. And Colorado is a team that you don't want to sleep on. This is probably a team that you don't want to really play in the month of November because they'll probably be better by that time, and they're also recruiting well. But I think Utah will still be favored by a couple touchdowns just because of home field advantage and all that. So those are the games where I think Utah is going to be favored by a couple touchdowns at 80%. We now go to the purple games. Utah going to be favored by about a touchdown in this game. Do I see any purple games on here that they will be favored in by about a touchdown? I got 3 of those games. I got Florida here at home, Baylor on the road, and then UCLA here on September the 23rd at home. So Florida, obviously, a revenge game for Utah. I don't really know what Florida's going to look like. Like I said, it's just based off of the teams from last year. Florida was an okay average team. They were decent, but not really good enough. Baylor, another one of those teams that was decent last year, but not good enough. So that's why I got to favor Utah in this game as well. But it's going to be a tough game on the road. These are 2 tough non-conference games to kick off the year, like I said, in the month of September. And then obviously UCLA is a rival game, but you never know what can happen. I probably would have put this one in the blue as well. I'm going to stick with it and put it in the purple just because it's a rival game. You never know what can happen. So I'm going to stick with it and put it in the purple. So these games right here, I think Utah will be favored by about a touchdown. And the rest of their games here on the schedule, Oregon State on the road, USC on the road, Oregon at home, and then Washington on the road. These games right here I see being 50-50 games. I see them pretty much, going either way. Obviously, Oregon State will be a tough place to play. USC is a rival game. You never know what can happen. Oregon at home, obviously a game that can go either way as well. Washington's another game that can go either way because it is on the road. If this game was at home for Utah, I probably would have put them at the touchdown favorite mark, like at the purple games. But as of right now, I'm going to count it as a 50-50 game. So all these games here on the schedule are 50-50 games. How many games do I see Utah winning on that schedule in the 50-50 games? I see them winning 2 out of those 4 games. Let's say they beat Oregon State, then lose to USC here on the road. Then they beat Oregon and also beat Washington. So, yeah, I think they win 2 out of those 4 games on the schedule. I mean, their losses could probably come all on the road, and their probably only win on that schedule would probably be Oregon. But these are tough road games here. Oregon State on the road, USC on the road, and then Washington on the road. Those 3 road games are pretty tough, but at least they get one of those 50-50 games at home, and that's the Oregon game on October the 28th. So you look at this schedule, obviously it's a really tough schedule for Utah. You look at the games that they're favored in and also the games that are 50-50 games. Like I said, I think they'll win 2 out of those 4 games. The overall projected record for this Utah team in 2023 comes out to be 9-3 for 2023. So I really do see them winning 2 out of those 4 games on the schedule. And maybe one of their 3 losses come on the road at Washington. Maybe USC, maybe Oregon State, you never know. But they could still potentially lose that game on the road at Baylor. That will be a tough non-conference game. And overall, this schedule is really tough for Utah heading into the 2023 college football season. This is probably one of the toughest schedules I've seen in the Pac-12 so far. When I'm looking through the Pac-12 schedules and everything, I've done back-to-back Pac-12 teams now throughout these projections. I might do another one probably tomorrow. You never know, but yeah, that's my overall projected record for this Utah team. Like I said, I think they win 2 out of those 4 games that are 50-50 games. They will be tough, but I think that's how that works there. So, yeah, my overall projected record for Utah is 9-3, non-official prediction. I don't do my predictions until May, and this is simply a projection based on that schedule. But that's my projected record for this Utah team, and pretty much, we'll continue to do more projections throughout this week. And stay tuned here for more sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.